No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 38. Nigel Farage has slammed Two Tier Keir Starmer for failing to condemn the carnage at the Notting Hill Carnival, which saw 5 people stabbed, 2 people fighting for their lives, and 37 police officers assaulted. The MSM has also decided to ignore the bloodshed for political reasons.
Wider context, though, apparently stabbings are now down at Notting Hill Carnival as well.
But in an authoritarian and frankly terrifying State of the Nation speech today, the PM did not even mention the London violence, instead framing his rebuild of the country against the white working classes at the so-called riots in the wake of the Southport Massacre.
That I won't tolerate a breakdown in law and order under any circumstances. And I will not listen to those who exploit grieving families and disrespect local communities.
In my digest next, I will condemn Two Tier Keir's approach. Refusing to even mention mass immigration will only increase the divides in Orwellian Britain. Also coming up on the show today, my superstar panel, Lewis Brackpool and Thomas Bright, weigh in on Meta boss Mark Zuckerberg's apology, far too late, in my opinion, for COVID-era censorship. And then my royal mastermind, Prince Harry's biographer, Angela Levin, is back on why King Charles is crazy to consider a reunion with his troubled son. Then, in the uncancelled after show, more royal exclusives with Angela, including why Harry is upsetting William yet again. You can register to watch on our own website at www.outspoken.live. Most importantly, it's a safe space, free of censorship, and your support at just £5 a month not only gives you 30 minutes of extra content every single weekday, it also allows us to continue making this independent daily news show. Quite important in these dystopian times, I hope you would agree. Let's go. So in the dystopian world of Two Tier Keir Starmer, the authoritarian Prime Minister hosted a terrifying sort of Ministry of Truth style address to the nation in the gardens of Downing Street today about law and order. Yet he failed to mention one word about the utter carnage at the Notting Hill Carnival in Sadiq Khan's lawless London, which saw 50 police officers injured, 8 stabbings with 2 in hospital fighting for their life, including an innocent mother, an acid attack, 12 sex offences, 67 possessions of offensive weapons. You get the drift. Nigel Farage asked, will Keir Starmer condemn the 37 assaults on emergency workers at Notting Hill Carnival? The answer, as I'll show you shortly, was a categorical no. He wasn't even going to bring it up. But what I've found most sick has been the complete compliance of the mainstream media, who have done everything possible to either ignore or justify the horrifying levels of bloodshed, presumably because of the ethnic nature of the event. The most egregious has been Sly News, whose reporting of Notting Hill would be comical if it wasn't so depressing. Watch them decide to treat the violence in the complete opposite manner to which they treated the so-called riots.
A 20-year-old arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and violent disorder. The other 2 people arrested on suspicion of violent disorder. The officers are also injured, says that they gave police medics gave emergency medical treatment until the arrival of paramedics. The woman was transported to hospital where she remains in critical condition. It says that while the investigation is ongoing, initial inquiries suggest the woman was caught in an altercation between 2 men. So it sounds like the woman was caught up in a fight breaking out. It's not yet clear if these people were known to her. Police are continuing to ask, of course, for any witnesses. Up to 1 million people attend Carnival. Wider context, though, apparently stabbings are now down at Notting Hill Carnival as well.
As Outspoken regular Father Calvin Robinson pointed out, this is awful. Playing down stabbing. She may as well say, sorry, I have to tell you about the stabbing because we still purport to be a news channel, but I would rather not, because I fear it is going to make you all racist. Big picture, guys. Diversity is our strength. And Calvin added, if Carnival was an event with predominantly white working class Britons rather than immigrants, it would be condemned. They would be labelled, quote, far-right thugs, identified, arrested, rushed through the courts and sent to prison. Two Tier Keir would be holding a press conference. And the propaganda on Sly News continued as the day wore on.
This happened on this street, Goulburn Road, in the middle of Carnival, around 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. You know, Carnival, you've got around 1 million people who would have attended that weekend. I was certainly one of them. I was here on the Sunday, and the vibe that I certainly picked up was one that was celebratory and quite cathartic, really, following the racist riots that we've seen in the country over the last few weeks. But what happened here was indication that not everybody, a very small minority of people, come to Carnival, sometimes with different agendas and for different reasons. And some of those people would have been arrested by the police to investigate, to find out what part they played in this particular incident. The police say that 3 men in their 20s have been arrested on suspicion of violent disorder and of attempted murder. They say that these arrests are a significant step in their investigation. They say that they are the result of a determined effort by detectives who have worked around the clock to identify and locate and arrest these suspects. You may have also picked up that the police had spoken about being tired of having to deal with crime at Carnival, and in this particular year there were 8 stabbings that were recorded over the weekend. But as I stress, that's with a number of 1 million people who would have attended this weekend. And what we know here is that Carnival is an important cultural landmark, one that people celebrate from all over the world. People come to the UK, come to London specifically to celebrate Carnival. So when they're hearing about these kinds of incidents, it's often with a very, very heavy heart indeed. This happened.
Okay, Sly News child, I completely accept the 8 stabbings because this is such an important cultural event and I do not want to accept you having a very good time. The Guardian, they went even further, describing the most violent event sanctioned by authorities as, quote, one big ball of happiness on their front page. But as Peter Lloyd pointed out, the newspaper's police and crime correspondent Vikram Dodd, who has been posting obsessively about the so-called far-right violence, has been completely silent on the Carnival carnage. So it seems like different rules apply at Notting Hill, even when it comes to the sexual assault of police officers. Watch.
Carnival in Notting Hill, London.
Yet again, with no opposition coming from the Conservative Party, just nothing, it's been left to Reform UK, now the unofficial opposition, to challenge this madness. Its chairman, Zia Youssef, posted, I encourage everyone to take a moment to read the below and process that they aren't reports from a battle in Kabul, but from a festival the Mayor of London describes as a, quote, way to bring communities together. Orwell would be lost for words. Deputy Leader Richard Tice added, this is not a carnival, but carnage. Utterly indefensible, Starmer and Khan. The far right or the far left? Why the hell should taxpayers foot bill for 7,000 police to supervise this madness? £12 million it costs. But when the time came for Starmer's big law and order address in the Downing Street garden, do you think there was one reference to those horrendous, developing, violent statistics from the Carnival? Nope, not one word. His ire has been firmly focused on the white working classes who took to the streets furious in the wake of the Southport Massacre.
Nazi salutes at the cenotaph. The cenotaph, the very place we honour those who gave their lives for this country, desecrating their memory under the pretence, and it is a pretence, of legitimate protest. Now they're learning that crime has consequences, that I won't tolerate a breakdown in law and order under any circumstances, and I will not listen to those who exploit grieving families and disrespect local communities. But these riots didn't happen in a vacuum. They exposed the state of our country, revealed a deeply unhealthy society, the cracks in our foundations laid bare, weakened by a decade of division and decline, infected by a spiral of populism which fed off cycles of failure of the last government. Every time they faced a difficult problem, they failed to be honest. They offered the snake oil of populism, which led to more failure, round and round and round, stuck in the rut of the politics of performance.
But it is not snake oil populism to point out Starmer is lying. He does accept a breakdown in law and order if it involves certain communities. The lack of condemnation in that address over Notting Hill is proof of that. We are not stupid. But it wasn't just Notting Hill that he decided not to mention today. Indeed, there was no mention of the epidemic of knife crime, no mention of the illegal invasion of our southern border, no mention of the anti-white graffiti in Birmingham, no mention of uncontrolled mass immigration, no mention of the rapes and other crimes being conducted by migrants here illegally. But this was his vision.
But I also know that we can get through this together. Because the riots didn't just betray the sickness, they also revealed the cure, found not in the cynical conflict of populism, but in the coming together of a country. The people who got together the morning after, all around the country, with their brooms, their shovels, their trowels, and cleared up their community. They reminded us who we really are. I felt real pride in those people who cleaned up our streets, rebuilt the walls, repaired the damage.
Starmer doesn't get it. Let me tell him, those folk cleaning up the communities are exactly the same people concerned about mass immigration and the damage being caused to our beloved country. There's so many examples of this, but I was really struck over the past 24 hours by a post that Ron made that was replied to by the great Colin Brazier, my friend, ex-Sly News presenter, GB News launch host. And Ron wrote, and I'm sure lots of you can really empathise with this. Ron said, at 66 years old, I look at my country and don't recognise it. Its values and culture have changed so much. I'm not racist, but my country is changing so quickly around me. Am I alone in feeling like this? I wish I could be. I wish it could be as it was before. And Colin Brazier replied, at 66 years old, oh no, that's Ron's tweet. I need to get Colin's reply. Sorry, let me just get Colin's reply here because it was beautiful words of wisdom that I do really want to share, and I will find them. Okay, here's Colin's reply. You are not alone. It has become an article of faith among progressives that failing to welcome irreversible change is a sign of moral or intellectual enfeeblement. These same people champion the primacy of lived experience, just not yours, Ron, or many millions like you. And I thought that was a really great message from Colin. And as you know, I do sometimes like to try and focus on the pockets of hope. We need it, don't we? So I wanted to also share with you a brilliant caller to the left-wing radio station LBC.
50 days under Keir Starmer's Labour regime is like some sinister Orwellian and authoritarian dictatorship. Really does.
Really? Daniel, come on.
I'm being serious,
Okay,
Ali.
tell me why. Tell me why.
I'll tell you why, because we've seen millions of people labelled by him as far-right thugs. We've seen people thrown into prison for, and I quote the police on this, posting inaccurate information on Facebook. And we've seen billions upon billions upon billions of pounds of our taxes given away on overseas climate aid. And that was confirmed by Ed Miliband in the middle of July, that they are going to give £11.6 billion of our taxes to countries like Malaysia, who has a sovereign wealth fund worth $24 billion, whilst at the same time allowing our most vulnerable pensioners potentially to freeze to death in winter. It is despicable.
What do you think you should have done, Daniel, about the riots, if not take a firm hand? I mean, you've got societal tensions building here. He had to send a message, and a firm one, quickly.
Well, he did, Ali, and I know all about riots because in August 2011, with the London riots, I was on the front line as a police officer with a shield and a baton protecting Londoners and protecting Londoners' homes and businesses. But his response was incendiary, inflammatory, divisive, authoritarian, and plain wrong. He should be uniting the country, not dividing us.
Oh, Daniel, absolutely superb. I love it when the MSM is put in their place like that. And you desperately saw Ali Mirage, who's meant to be one of LBC's right-wing presenters, in horror, because Daniel perfectly went against the narrative. I also had a conversation today with the very successful businessman, a man I respect a lot, Duncan Bannatyne, on X, because I think he thought I was being a little bit too negative. So he wrote to me and said, the problem is, Dan, there is nobody to replace Starmer with. The country is in a terrible mess and we have no alternative than to give him a chance to sort it. By the way, Truss was worth. But I hope my response to Duncan sums up why I am presenting this show every day at great risk in the current climate. I said Truss wasn't even given a chance, but that's a whole other argument. But Starmer's solutions, meanwhile, are to destroy free speech, jail dissidents, and demonise the working classes worried about mass immigration. I just can't stand by and watch that happen, I'm afraid. It's not normal, and the MSM is compliant. But to discuss this further, let me introduce today's superstar panel. And it is absolutely brilliant to welcome back Lewis Brackpool. He is, of course, the successful YouTuber and conservative commentator. And joining Outspoken today for the first time, Tom Bright, who was a candidate for Reform UK at the most recent general election. Great to have you both here. Lewis, can you believe that Starmer went through that entire address about law and order, given what had just happened at the Notting Hill Carnival, and he didn't say a word, not one word, and neither has Sadiq Khan?
I hate to say it, but it was to be expected, unfortunately. These are the sort of times that we're living in. I'd like to remind yourself and the audience as well that Sadiq Khan put on restrictions all the way up to the Euros because he was afraid of disorder. Yet we've kind of seen a very different way of policing and the way of handling various events from different communities, and of course with the incendiary remarks that Keir Starmer has been making, demonising concerned parents and various others, putting them in the same bracket as people that attended in disorder. So I'll be honest with you, it was to be expected. And you can see, obviously, the images coming up now of Keir Starmer taking the knee back when Black Lives Matter was out rioting as well in the streets of the UK. So we know where Keir Starmer lies. He's an ex-Trotskyite, so it is to be expected.
Yeah, but he should admit that then. Instead, he says he will not accept a breakdown in law and order. And we know he will, because he will accept a breakdown in law and order if it happens at the Notting Hill Carnival, and he will accept a breakdown in law and order if it happens during a Black Lives Matter demonstration. Tom Bright, great to have you here for the first time. And thank goodness for your party, Reform UK, because the Conservatives seem to have just disappeared off the face of the earth. And actually, I think the messages that we're getting today from Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, and Zia Youssef is completely where the public is at.
I don't. Yeah, I think obviously Reform UK has had a really kind of successful general election. And I think the reason behind that is because people are just completely fed up with the status quo. And I think Reform UK is only going to get stronger as people become completely disaffected with this Labour government. And as you can see, our 5 MPs there we currently have in Parliament, we're heading towards 2029. And things are looking really good for Reform UK because people, as I say, are really fed up with the establishment, the status quo, and Keir Starmer is really everyone's worst nightmare. And I think we're seeing government.
Oh, we are seeing that. We absolutely are. Can Nigel Farage be PM, do you think, Tom, in 2029? Is that possible?
I think obviously we're limited by the first past the post electoral system. But when you look at popular vote, I mean, we had millions of votes. We had around 4.5 million votes. So I think anything is possible. And I mean, the current Labour government, if they continue on this trajectory of complete destruction of the country, then I think we could well see Nigel at some point in number 10.
I agree. I think it's possible. I actually do think it's possible. Lewis, the thing is, it's not just the fact that he didn't mention the Notting Hill Carnival. I would actually argue the much more serious omission today from Starmer's address, which, by the way, was so full of doom and gloom. He is the least inspiring person in the world. He's not someone who I believe in any way. But I think the most glaring omission was failing to acknowledge at all that there is any public concern about mass immigration changing the fabric of our country. And given that is now the number one issue for voters, according to recent polling, I think this is where he's going to actually experience his downfall. To just pretend that it's not even part of the conversation, he is so ideological, he is so tone deaf. But this will be the thing that brings him down eventually, won't it?
I agree, totally agree. I mean, this is the most important topic that Britons are crying out for politicians to sort out, not just speak about, but to sort out. And if you have just decades and decades of just, I don't know, just ignoring this vital topic, you're going to get people that are going to be angry, to be furious on this issue that's just completely boiled over. And we've all predicted, as well as you, Dan, that Keir Starmer is to be, quite honestly, the most unpopular Prime Minister that we've ever had. And do you know, I completely agree, because he's on the road to this unpopularism. And I just think it's absolutely sickening. It's a complete betrayal of the British people. It's a complete betrayal of what people want sorted out. It was the number one issue during the general election, yet more people continue to be silenced and ignored. And it's just a complete betrayal.
Yeah, it is. He doesn't even want to have the discussion, which is what I find so absolutely disturbing, actually. I really do. Tom, you've obviously had very strong rhetoric from your chairman, your deputy leader today about the Notting Hill Carnival. Has the time come to just call this whole thing off? It should be banned. I mean, if this was any other event at all in London's calendar, I mean, goodness me, imagine if there was that sort of carnage on St. George's Day, for example, or connected to a football tournament. It would not be allowed. So has the time come to just say the Notting Hill Carnival must be banned?
Exactly. I think we're seeing, obviously, it's more examples of just two-tier policing. I'm not too keen on banning things myself as a libertarian. I don't really kind of take that approach. But what I would say is I think the organisers have to take far more responsibility.
Well, they should pay for the policing, surely, at the very least. Why should we be paying for the policing? £12 million.
Exactly, yeah, around £12 million. I mean, I don't think any British taxpayer really wants to be spending money on policing the Notting Hill Carnival. There are plenty of other things that we could be putting our money to good use, to solving other areas of NHS or whatever. But so I wouldn't ban it. However, I think the organisers should have to pay for the policing bill.
Yeah, they should. I mean, yeah. The thing is, Lewis, it's not just two-tier policing anymore, though, is it? It's two-tier reporting. It's a two-tier society. Because look at the rhetoric and the information that was put into the public domain after the so-called riots. The criminals were humiliated. And actually, they weren't even criminals. They were accused. They had their faces plastered all over social media. There were music videos made. There were warnings put out. Now, we haven't seen any of that with the Notting Hill Carnival. We haven't seen any of the perpetrators whatsoever.
Absolutely. It's quite clearly a political motive. Even before the riots, I went as a journalist to the demonstration held in London by Tommy Robinson.
Oh, yes, Uniting the Kingdom.
Yes, Uniting the Kingdom. And I went there as a journalist and as a reporter because I don't trust the mainstream media to, of course, report on these things. And we knew, of course, how the media would report on such an event. And you can see the stark contrast between near enough 90,000 people attending in Trafalgar Square peacefully and just standing, watching a documentary, flying flags. There was music, anything like that, everything there. And you see the contrast between the legacy media calling everyone there, even journalists, far right, just for attending, because they're afraid of, I say afraid, they're concerned about two-tier policing, mass immigration, all of the topics that the country need to address and talk about, and begging politicians to fix, yet they won't. And the contrast between the legacy media reporting on that event to now is just totally stark.
Well, I think that's
no
a really
wonder
good
people are
comparison
angry.
because, you know, if there had been any trouble at Uniting the Kingdom, any trouble, it would have absolutely dominated the mainstream media. And Sly News, which is putting these young activist children to cover the Notting Hill Carnival, clearly just because they're fans of the event, when it came to the Uniting the Kingdom event, they assigned Martin Brunt, the crime correspondent, to cover it, even though there was no crime. So that absolutely tells you where the mainstream media are completely intellectually dishonest when it comes to covering these events. Thank goodness, though, we have Andrew Lawrence, my favourite new comedian, to bring some levity to proceedings. You're going to love this.
Hey guys, or should I say Wagwan brethren. I've just spent the weekend at the Notting Hill Carnival. I go every year, I just love it. The costumes, the dancing, the music, the knife crime, the open public displays of sexual degradation. There really is something for everyone. Round one corner there'll be a gaggle of white progressive women with braids, queuing up at a jerk chicken van with a food hygiene rating of 2, having their pockets picked. Round the next corner, a crackhead gyrating against a wheelie bin, the sound of calypso in the air. You look at it and you think, this is what cultural enrichment looks like. Did I get stabbed? Yes, of course, but it was just a flesh wound. When you look like this, you've got to expect it. What sort of bank holiday is it if you don't spend 5 hours in A&E waiting for stitches? As the bloke was swiping at me with a zombie knife, I thought about the crimes of my colonial ancestors, and I actually wanted to thank him. I wanted to say, come at me, brah, cut the white guilt out of me.
Goodness me, that was absolutely brilliant. A couple of other things that came out of Slippery Starmer's State of the Nation address today. Firstly, this is not a Prime Minister for all of the country, because you can see with who he chooses to ask questions of him at these press conferences. And yet again, he failed to call on Talk TV or GB News. So Christopher Hope, the political editor of GB News, posted on X that the channel has only been called to ask a question by Sir Keir Starmer once in 5 press conferences since Labour's election win last month. If you look closer, you can spot me with my hand in the air today in the Downing Street garden. And I do think, Lewis, that is indicative, isn't it? Because why would he not even want to take a difficult question? Presumably it's because he knew Christopher Hope might, for example, ask about the carnage at the Notting Hill Carnival.
Of course, he has to protect the narrative, Dan. Of course he must. You know, without protecting the narrative, then of course his his position will just crumble. His total fabrication of the events transpiring would just completely crumble. So of course he has to keep that narrative alive. But it is despicable. We shouldn't be living in a country where politicians can get away with not circumventing tough questions from journalists. It needs to be done. That's a journalist's point. That's a journalist's role in that event, is to ask the important questions. So
Well,
It
indeed.
doesn't.
And Tom, you look at the sort of treatment that Nigel Farage gets any time he puts himself in front of the mainstream media, which is always, he is never afraid to tackle the tough questions from the mainstream media. Yet Starmer today, I thought it was an absolute disgrace, actually, an absolute disgrace. Shame on every one of those Westminster Insider journalists who failed to ask him anything about the violence at the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah, I mean, I think his speech was just completely meaningless, to be honest.
Well, yeah.
And it was just one of those. Yet again, we have the lectern and we have the slogan, you know, fixing the foundations. I mean, I don't know what that means, but I think he should have read something like burning the house down, to be honest, because that's what he really is doing to this country. But yeah, I mean, it's just another vacuous speech. And as you say,
it was. And the thing is, especially seeing this as a guy who is completely embroiled in sleaze within just 2 months of his administration. And again, this isn't being picked up by the mainstream media because it's not the sort of scandal that they want to focus on. But Lord Ali, who has, for some reason, been given access or was given full access to Downing Street because he happens to be the biggest personal donor to Slippery Starmer. This goes against all of the morality that Labour claimed they were going to bring into Downing Street. And there was an absolute car crash interview today with the Labour Party chairman, Ellie Reeves. This is the sister of Rachel Reeves. It's quite weird. They don't really look alike, but they speak alike. You're going to get this. But this interview was a complete and utter shambles.
Tell me about Lord Wahid Ali being given a pass to number 10. What was that all about?
As far as I'm aware, he hasn't got a pass now. He had.
Yeah, but he did have one.
I think he had a pass for a few weeks.
And it was a AAA pass as well. He could go wherever he wanted to.
Well, I don't know about that, Kay, but I understand that it was for a period of a few weeks when we first got into government. You know, Lord Ali is a well-respected Labour peer.
Shouldn't have access to Downing Street, though.
Well, as far as I'm aware, he wasn't involved in any policy decisions in Downing Street. It's not unusual for a sort of political figure to have a pass. No, as far as I'm aware, no rules have been broken, and he doesn't have a pass anymore.
Nothing to do with the fact that he personally donated quite a lot of money to Keir Starmer's campaign?
No, I mean, Lord Ali.
What about the £20,000 worth of clothes and glasses he gave him?
Lord Ali is someone who's been a Labour peer for a very long time. He did a great deal of work supporting our general election campaign and had a pass for a very short period of time after we won the election. He wasn't involved in policy decisions.
Lots of other people helped you win the election as well. Do they have a pass too?
I can't comment on individual who's got passes and who hasn't got passes to number 10. And I think.
I mean, Lewis, come on. They're utter hypocrites, aren't they? Also,
Completely.
that's the best they've got.
Well, absolutely. And I'm very surprised that Kay Burley's journalism there. It's not usually that great. So I was very surprised about that. But to me, it just screams, I hate to say it, well, we know it, but, you know, I don't like to use the word a lot, but corruption, pure corruption and pure nepotism as well. I don't know. It's so blatantly obvious. It's so out in the open, but it's nice to see that it's being pulled up there and actually challenged for once, because you don't see that very often.
No, I mean, you don't, in fairness. And I do think, Tom, that Kay Burley was right to ask those difficult questions. But why were those difficult questions not properly asked of Slippery Starmer today? The only time it came up, he brushed the whole thing off, tried to slam the Conservative Party and moved on. There's such an arrogance to him. He is authoritarian in his approach. He doesn't believe that he actually needs to justify himself, does he, Tom?
No, I don't think he has a moral compass, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think he's always right. Everyone else is wrong. And of course, what we see with the left is, they fully justify their behavior when they clearly are wrong. They think that they're morally right. So, I mean, Keir Starmer is, as Lewis said, far left. So I don't think we could expect anything less from him, to be honest.
Extraordinary story emerging from the US about the lengths the government, the Biden-Harris administration, went to cover up factual information during the COVID pandemic. Now, I was one of the people who was heavily impacted by this because I spoke the truth about the lab leak, about the vaccine, about lockdowns, about the mandates, and time and again, I was censored over that period. Well, Mark Zuckerberg, the boss of Meta, which of course owns Facebook, has now admitted in a bombshell letter that in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressure our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. He goes on. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions, including COVID-19 related changes we made to our enforcement in the wake of this pressure. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. You should be more outspoken, Mark. Like the name of this show. But honestly, I have so many mixed feelings about this, Lewis Brackpool, because on the one hand, I think, hallelujah, are we entering a new era of free speech? Has Elon Musk fundamentally now moved the Overton window with the ownership of X? Are we going to be safe to have more of these discussions right here on YouTube and not have to do it all in the Outspoken after show, for example? I have all of those questions. At the same time, I also think how pathetic and gutless now, coming out 3 years later and admitting you got this stuff wrong. Because I remember back in March 2020, when I was talking about the fact that COVID was probably leaked from a lab, and remember, no one or very few people were doing it in March 2020, all of my content on Facebook was censored.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those were dark times, Dan, I must admit, and it's left a massive scar in a lot of people's lives as well, from lockdowns, mandates, censorship. We can take comfort to know that the truth will always reveal itself in the end. We can take comfort in that. It's just how long. And looking back, it was a big I'm actually struggling to talk about it because it's just so horrific. This mass censorship that was pushed onto, well, it was worldwide completely, of course. I'm a bit like you, Dan, if I'm totally honest. I'm very torn about this because on the one hand, I want to say finally the truth is out, finally that we can put that to rest and say, look, conspiracy theorists are right again. But then the other hand, this anger comes back. This anger comes back of being let down and being betrayed once again by governments, by social media, the fact that he was even pressured by Biden and Harris to even do such a sinister thing. So I'm a bit like you. I'm very torn between the two, between anger and relief, and it's kind of a bit of a battle for me at the minute. So I don't really have a clear head to kind of answer that. At the minute.
No, indeed. I completely feel the same. And especially, what about the poor folk that lost their livelihoods because they were censored or banned from YouTube?
And arrested.
Which happened to a lot of people. I mean, yeah, indeed, arrested. Although obviously some of them have come out the other side even stronger. I think of Dan Bongino or Steve Bannon, folk like that who questioned the narrative over the COVID pandemic and actually found themselves deplatformed. The other really disturbing development is that Zuckerberg has admitted now that one of the reasons there was so much censorship around the Hunter Biden story in the run-up to the 2020 election was because the FBI had warned them about a potential Russian disinformation operation. And the thing is, Russian disinformation is now blamed on everything. I mean, Tom, your leader, Nigel Farage, has been accused, falsely, by the way, time and again, of being a Russian asset. And it feels sometimes like the authorities hide specifically by this term, Russian disinformation, in order to effectively crush dissidents, to crush people who are challenging the narrative, or sometimes to crush an entire story, which is what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop. We obviously now know the guy's a convicted felon.
Absolutely, yeah. And the damage is done. I mean, when that accusation is made, the damage is already done. The interference in the election has already happened. The damage to Nigel's reputation has already happened. So to come out and apologise afterwards is kind of pointless, really. And I don't actually even believe the apology. I just think they know exactly what they're doing, to be honest. And as you say, they're just trying to silence people.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously as well, it's about why is he releasing this now to Jim Jordan, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the US? Is it because more information was going to emerge showing the sorts of censorship that big tech agreed to give into? But I have to hold on to hope from this. I have to hold on to hope, because right now we have slippery Starmer in the UK, Lewis, considering strengthening Ofcom, the Ofcommunists, as I call them, literally a government censor, so that during, for example, the so-called riots, they would be able to legally force social media companies to take down information. Now, I believe Elon Musk will stand firm on that, even if it means X being banned in the UK, which would be completely dystopian. I certainly know Chris Pavlovsky, who's the chief executive of Rumble, he would hold firm. Actually, if Mark Zuckerberg is going to start pushing back against government censorship, it could be a really powerful tipping point that might change the narrative.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have been very concerned about the online safety bill that was pushed through, and it strengthens the off-communists' power with them changing the landscape of political discussion and other types of discussion online. It was sinister as well to watch the Metropolitan Police and even Good Morning Britain talk or debate the idea of completely shutting down social media whilst the riots was even happening. I don't suppose you remember that.
Oh, I do. I do. I couldn't believe it. I actually played some of it on this show. It's like, to even have the debate means that's where they're thinking. But look, Good Morning Britain, for example, the mainstream media in the UK, they were among the absolute worst during the COVID pandemic, and they made everything so much worse. And to this day, Tom, broadcasters like that have not given any time to the victims of the vax. For example, I know Reform UK is the only political party in the UK that has actually addressed the victims of the vax, has actually said, yes, we will hold an inquiry into it if we're in power. The rest of the mainstream media and the rest of the political establishment just want to pretend that there are no victims of the vax and move on. Let's not talk about it.
Exactly, yeah. And what was once conspiracy now becomes fact.
Yes.
Of course, it's convenient that, suddenly they say, oh, well, maybe that was true. And there's no recourse. They come out with this apology, and that, there's nothing that we can really do about it. We just have to say, oh, okay, so you were wrong and there are no consequences. But we all know that if somebody, posted something that was considered misinformation, that they're given a 2 to 3 year prison sentence. So,
yeah, indeed, during the riots. And I would say the people who were banned over the COVID pandemic, they should now be restored to all of those social media platforms. Your leader, Nigel Farage, did actually post on X about this. He said, I'm pleased to see Mark Zuckerberg coming clean about pandemic propaganda pushed onto Facebook by the government. We are not being told the truth about many things. And that's what's going to be interesting, isn't it, Lewis? What pressure, for example, was put on the social media platforms during the recent so-called riots? What was the government telling and the sort of state agencies telling them to do over that period? We have a right to know, don't we?
Of course. I mean, we saw it during the quote unquote pandemic, where nudge units were sent out by the government to push people towards stuff like the experimental mRNA. And this is where it becomes extremely sinister, when you have journalists as well, like Peter Hitchens, for example, who was even spied on by intelligence agencies and the nudge units, of course, really trying to have a go. You've got, of course, sinister organizations, dare I bring them up as well, the 77th Brigade that are part of the army, that are part of these nudge units and actually have a hand in discourse on social media. Of course, talking about that paints a bit of a target, but it has to be done. But this is a sinister road that we've been on. I know we talk about how things are changing and things are going in a certain direction. We're already on that path.
Yes. And we in the UK are going in the other direction. And that's why I absolutely believe this is really important. I know sometimes all of this feels a bit highfalutin. It feels like it's not connected to your day-to-day life. And I understand that, but actually it's so important, because without free speech, we have nothing. Without free speech, there probably would have been vaccine mandates where every single person in the country had to be jabbed multiple times. Without free speech, our lockdown would have gone on for years and years and years, because look at what happened in China without free speech. So this is an incredibly important issue. You won't hear many people discussing Mark Zuckerberg's letter today in the British mainstream media, and that's why I really wanted to do it here on Outspoken. But thank you to my brilliant superstar panel, Lewis Brackpool. I will put his YouTube page in my show notes later on tonight so that you can make sure that you go and subscribe to him. And Tom Bright, Reform UK candidate, great to have you on Outspoken for the first time. Now, Angela Levin is standing by on this major news that King Charles is considering a reunion with Prince Harry. Now, Angela, she's Harry's biographer and thinks this is a terrible idea. She'll be here in just 1 minute. But first, you know I promised to talk to you on the show about products that are life-changing. This one's personal, but let me tell you guys, you're going to love it. And ladies, if you are looking for a present to treat your husband or boyfriend, this is a game changer. They will be so grateful to you. That's because men want our grooming routine to be a one and done deal. So the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your nether regions are over, thanks to my friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep you trimmed from 12 to 6. Today, let me talk to you about the Beard and Balls bundle, which features the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. Now, I know when you say lawnmower, this is the type of thing you think of. But actually, I'm talking about a product that provides precision trimming for all areas, even the sensitive zones, that will get you manicured as that freshly cut grass. So I'm talking about a trimmer for the moneymaker, another for the boys downstairs. The trimmer gets it right the first time, being gentle on the skin in all your delicate places. With 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, you can choose between a precise trim or a smooth finish, and it's waterproof, so you can trim in the shower and not make a mess, which is perfect for those of us who appreciate efficiency. Next, let me tell you about the Beard Hedger. Whether you're going for a neat stubble or a full-on lumberjack look, it will keep you completely covered. There's a titanium-coated steel T-blade, 20 length options. You can achieve any style you want with just a twist of the zoom wheel. And just like the lawnmower, the Beard Hedger is also waterproof, so you can handle your beard grooming in the sink without worrying about water damage. It's got 60 minutes of runtime and LED charge indicator. You'll never be caught mid-trim with a dead battery. This is such a gentle product. I can guarantee you no more cuts. Plus, this will increase your confidence, actually. It really will. That is how good the product is. The really exciting news is today I can offer you 20% off and totally free shipping. I ordered some the other day. It comes very quickly, beautifully packaged. All you have to do is visit www.manscaped.com. Use the code Outspoken at the checkout. So once you've put all of your details in, then you use the Outspoken code and 20% comes off just like that. www.manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results, just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it for the premium grooming experience. Trust Manscaped. But now, back to the show, and it's time for our Royal Mastermind. And the amazing Angela Levin joins me now. She is the biographer of Prince Harry, Queen Camilla, and one of the best connected royal journalists of all time. And Angela, suggestions that King Charles is planning on a reunion with Prince Harry after being advised by religious leaders. What's going on, and why do you think this is such a bad idea?
Yeah, hello, Dan. I think it's a terrible idea, really. I think he feels vulnerable and he wants to make everything all right. Now, it's very interesting because if he'd wanted to talk to Harry, he would just get it on the phone. He could get an aide and he could put it through. So I don't actually really believe this because he's had advice from priests and so on. And I think the person who would be most likely to have talked to him is the Archbishop of Canterbury, because Harry doesn't know who to talk to now. The royals aren't very keen on speaking to him. The aides don't want to put him through, largely because he doesn't give advance that he wants to talk to his father. He expects him to drop everything and talk to him. And so it's very interesting. Harry might be using the Archbishop as somebody who's an intermediary and will get his father to talk to him and perhaps and soften him up. But the point about that is, all those sort of very religious leaders are there to mend things, get things better. But I think if you think about the tear away that Harry and Meghan are, you think that it's really a very bad idea. First of all, I don't believe that it's going to happen because Harry will say he's very sorry and wants to fit into the royal family's life. I think that's absolutely out. And anyone who thinks it's very, very nice and it'll be all sorts of cozy, I am over 100% sure that it's not going to be like that. They're not going to fit in. They're going to demand. They've been demanding for 4 years. And that's some of the reasons that the king hasn't been speaking to them. He's not well. He doesn't want to be disturbed. And if something was done, can you imagine? Meghan hates the United Kingdom. I don't think, will come. And if she does come, she will be very demanding. She will want an enormous palace, bigger than you can imagine, because nothing pleases her. She always wants the most important thing, the biggest important thing. And they will want money, even though that they've been given a lot of money up to now. And I think it would be impossible. When father and son spoke a month ago, Harry wanted still going on for apologies to Meghan. Now, most of us would have thought Meghan needs to say apology herself, but oh no, it's that Meghan wasn't treated properly, and that's why she's been very depressed and very unhappy and all that sort of thing. It won't be cozy, it won't be kind, it won't be nice. And also you have to think of Prince William. He's the heir to the throne. He's worked very, very hard with his father. They get on now very well. He has a lot of things to do, but he wants nothing to do with Harry because he thinks his comments about himself, but even more so about his much loved Catherine, have been appalling. And a lot of them, or all of them, are not true. So Harry has said he wants to talk to Catherine face to face, but he's not going to be allowed to get anywhere near her. She doesn't want him anywhere near her, of course not. And she is still having treatment for cancer, and you can't upset somebody like that. The stress is too much. And I think he has to consider that very carefully. Princess Anne doesn't want them. Most of the royal family don't want him there. So you think if they come, what are they going to do? Can you imagine Meghan going out on a dutiful engagement and doing exactly what's wanted? Can you imagine her standing behind Catherine and William?
No way.
Can you imagine her trying to take over from Catherine? She's been very jealous of her, and she wants to to win and show that she's much better. And that's going to be very difficult. It seems to me not to be a good thing. I know Camilla the Queen quite well, but I think she will be very wise about things. But the most important thing is to look after their health. And I think Harry won't. The other thing is you can't trust him for what you say. He's sold comments that the King has said and made money that way. And so you have to be very, very careful. As I've said several times, that people said the only thing you can talk to Harry about now is the weather. And that's how they don't trust him. The tragedy is that they're sort of trying to bribe them in a way. Poor little kids in America, Archie and Lilybud, they've not had the comfort of grandparents or cousins or aunts and uncles. Meghan has nothing to do with her family apart from her mother. She still hasn't talked to her father since before the wedding, and Catherine and Harry feels that he has to have this amazing protection before he brings them over, therefore he can't. But if you're a parent and you go to Colombia, which is very, very dangerous, even if you leave them at home, aren't you full of worry and concern that something might happen to you and what would happen to them? So I don't think that they're actually putting their children first, because a lot of families would like to go all over the place. If it's dangerous and they've got very small children, they don't do it. They put it off because your children comes first in that sort of thing. So I think it's very difficult. And I will say, Harry is not the person I knew. I spent 15 months with him and I thought he was terrific. And he was
how has he changed, Angela?
Well, from being funny, caring, instinctive, lots of it was like his mother. He was very, very good with people from the military who'd been had injuries physically or mentally. And when I would follow him and say to the guys, how are you? Several of them would say to me, he's given me a reason to live. I now feel I can live. He's inspired me. And I think that's very fair of Harry. I think he has a marvelous way with people, but that's gone. He's been drained of that. His platform is nastiness. He's very, very determined. There's no kindness there. And I think that's what happened when he married. I do believe that the people your partners can bring out the best in you and the worst in you. And I'm very, very sorry to say that I think Meghan brings out the worst of him.
Can I just go back and ask about Justin Welby, Angela? Because I have to be honest, I don't trust the guy. And I'll explain why. I know he's the Archbishop of Canterbury. I do understand that. And so, of course, there's a certain respect that comes with that role. But the problem is, Angela, in lots of the things that he's done, he is very much on the woke side of things. He is very much pushing the Church of England towards going very, very woke. And he has always taken the side of Harry and Meghan. And he's always tried to be their sort of spokesperson behind the scenes and a go-between between Harry and Meghan and the King, for example. Now, I don't really feel that's appropriate, and I don't really trust his motives. Am I being unfair?
No, I can't. I don't like him at all. The only time I felt sorry for him was when, Meghan said that they got married 3 days before they actually had their wedding. Right. And she said that was because we didn't want all that fancy stuff. She'd asked for it, £32 million worth of it. She said, I wanted something that was intense and intense and down to earth. And so it was me, Harry, and the Archbishop of Canterbury. And when I heard that, I thought, well, that's impossible, because were there two people representing it? They had to see it. Was the place all right? I can't imagine them being married twice in a week. Anyway, a few days after that, the Archbishop had to make an announcement that it wasn't true. He didn't marry them 3 days before the actual wedding because of those reasons. You have to have witnesses, and Catherine and Meghan and Harriet put him in the most awful spot, and he actually admitted that he would be put in prison if that had been the case. You think, my goodness me, what have they done?
I know, but given she put him in that position, though, right? Given she put him in that position, though, surely he should have realised Meghan's a liar.
Yeah.
And instead, he still keeps... I feel like, Angela, he keeps doing their bidding. I don't really get it.
Yes, I think he likes being liked by them. I mean, I don't know him. I don't particularly want to know him. But it does seem very strange. And I think that he does. I do think, though, that some religious men who've got that as a proper job think that they want to see the goodness in everybody. And I think that he's tripped up because here the couple have very, very little goodness for the royal family, and certainly not for King Charles.
No, indeed. Look, Angela, I want to show you how the other side think and get your verdict on this, because I was completely dumbfounded when I was sent a clip of Yasmin Alabaya Brown. Now, she is the hard left columnist and commentator, not a fan of the royal family, so of course she loves Harry and Meghan. But what I found so distasteful is she's acting as if all of this was Charles's fault, and also she's acting as if Harry is still a young child rather than a about to be 40-year-old man. Angela, watch this and I'll get you to respond off the back.
Apparently, and I'm being very straight here because I'm not a royalist, I'm being as fair as I can be, has received advice from faith leaders that has led him to contemplate repairing his relationship with his son, Prince Harry. And he has taken, in quotes, spiritual nourishment from his discussions with religious leaders. And so it goes on and on and on. Well, look, he's your son. Yeah? Make up with him. You're the grown-up. Yes. Simple. You don't need archbishops and imams to tell you to do that and get spiritual nourishment. Just do it.
Is it that straightforward?
It is that straightforward. It really is that straightforward. But it can't happen because there's a lot of bitterness.
Yes. I mean,
and a bit on all sides.
Angela, your
response. I mean, I know her. I knew her very well a while ago. Yes, she was always talking about any man who was white should leave the country, but she's married to a very nice white man. So that's that. It's very interesting because a parent can absolutely love a child, but they don't like what's become of them. They don't like how they are. And so you have to protect yourself from it. It's not easy. And as I said, if they think that they're going to come over and they're going to cooperate, they're going to fit in with what they so hated, it's unbelievable. It's not going to happen. And you can't put it all on his head. He's not just the king, he's their father, Harry's father. And he's I spent a year with him writing about something, and he's a gentle, emotional, very caring man, and this must be hurting him enormously. But I know that Harry shouts at him, demands from him, and you can't keep on going like that. He wants him, for example, to make sure that he gets the protection that Harry has been after for a long time now, been 3 court cases. And this is that he wants his father to override the government to get him the top protection. Now, I'm sure he knows, and if he doesn't, he should know by now, that his father can't start changing the government for him and use all the citizens' tax payments to give him the proper protection he wants, because there's lots of layers and he would be quite safe in all sorts of layers. It's just this top one that is for the top four, Queen, King and heirs, right? And the rest have one just below. And he doesn't want that. And he's tampering with his father. He knows that would upset him. He knows it makes everybody angry. And he wants, it's his way of being proud and making something for himself. I think it's very sad. I think he's so much into the spare feeling that he doesn't know that once he was very helpful and very useful and did a lot for the Queen and William and his father. And I think it's a great pity that he now wants revenge very ferociously. So you can't be patronising on the king and saying, oh my goodness, how silly. I think you should be jolly lucky that you've got a child. I know she's got children. I won't make any comment about that. But, you know, when you've got children, they can cause trouble, but they're not that vile. They're not that horrible to you. They don't wash your dirty linen in public so that people know all sorts of things that you've said and a lot of things that are completely untrue about you. And because you're dignified, you don't reply because that adds to the adrenaline, which is actually what they want. And they're very clever at it, particularly Meghan. And it's very heartbreaking, but we have to stand firm and say this is nonsense.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, look, stand by. Angela, don't go anywhere because we've got lots more from you coming up in the uncancelled after show. You know it's very important to me that we have a safe space that isn't patrolled by big tech, where censorship and control runs deep. So that's why we have www.outspoken.live. It's our membership section where you get half an hour of extra content every single day. So at this stage, we come off YouTube, we come off Rumble, we move to our own platform to continue our conversation. It's completely uncensored too. That's what's important. Not patrolled by any of the big tech platforms. So www.outspoken.live is the address. You have to go there. You have to register. Then you can sign up for just £5 a month. And every Monday to Friday, you will get that half an hour of extra content live. Make sure you subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube and Rumble too, we're back every weekday at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. See you on the after show with Angela Levin.